where over 1 million people are buried.
It's wild how they say New York City never sleeps, but it's so busy you barely notice when someone's gone. You'd think a city that loud couldn't hide anything, but somehow there's a whole island nobody talks about.
About a mile off the coast of the Bronx in New York City is a narrow piece of land just 1 mile long. It's called Hart Island, and it's home to the largest public cemetery in the United States, where over 1 million people are buried.
Yo, tell me where else you got 1 million souls sitting this close to a city and ain't nobody even talks about it. There's like 8 million people in New York City and only like 1% even know this joint exists.
In April 2020, when the first wave of coronavirus swept through New York City, the island made national news for some grim scenes.
The mass grave being dug for coronavirus victims at New York City's Potter's Field.
Acknowledge they are burying unclaimed bodies on Hart Island.
And the bodies are expected to continue to stack up.
Since then, thousands more have been buried on Hart Island.
That was probably the worst year of my life. I lost so many family members back then. Just knowing they ended up somewhere like that, buried with strangers, feels wrong. Mass graves erase the idea of closure. You don't stand over one headstone, you stand over hundreds. At least with the single grave, you get a moment alone. There, no one truly does.
Burials on Hart Island date back to the Civil War, when it was a training ground and prisoner of war camp for the Union Army. Soldiers who died were some of the first recorded people to be buried here. Shortly after the war, in 1869, the city formally established the northern tip of the island as a cemetery, where they would bury bodies of New Yorkers who had no family members to organize burials for them. Mass burials officially started here in 1875, with over 1,800 burials in a single year.
This was a Union Army prison, so it was mostly Confederates locked up here. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't die from battle at all. Just starvation, sickness, and being forgotten.
And the city expanded on who could be buried there, to include fetuses, infants, those who couldn't afford a private burial, and even people who chose to be buried on Hart Island. During the 1918 flu pandemic, burials regularly hit over 5,000 per year. And mass burials where caskets are stacked in trenches were common.
Who would even choose to get buried there, bruh? Like you telling me people actually really signed up for that? Some did, believe it or not. It wasn't about the place, it was about the cost. Private burials in New York can run thousands of dollars, but at Hart Island, it's free. For some folks, that was their only option.
The Hart Island burial process hasn't changed much since the 1800s. After a death, the Office of the Medical Examiner makes an attempt to contact family members. If they can't reach anyone, morgues prepare the body and put it on a ferry with others to Hart Island. Then workers unload individual pine caskets from the ferry, dig a trench, and either place it next to or on top of others. Finally, it's covered in dirt and grass, and its location is added to Hart Island burial records.
Every coffin they drop becomes a part of the island itself. The boxes rot, the bones collapse, everything just melts into the soil, like the ground's made of what's left of them. I could only imagine a whole row of earth filled with nothing but the dust of bones.
According to experts, the city did a decent job of maintaining burial records, until a fire struck the island in the 1970s. It destroyed some records, and New York's municipalities struggled to create a new system quickly. And this happened as another health crisis was on the horizon.
AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome.
We're talking about a potential massive epidemic.
AIDS could become one of the top 10 causes of death in the United States.
This sounds crazy, but for AIDS to spread like that, people had to be really busy showing love, unprotected too. With how little science they had back then, I guess that's how an epidemic starts. You know what, Kev? That whole record makes it worse. Imagine losing someone to a disease like AIDS, then not even knowing where they buried, cause some files got buried decades ago. That's a double loss right there, man.
New York City was hit especially hard by the AIDS epidemic. Thousands were buried on Hart Island as a result. And the cemetery, previously confined to the northern tip, expanded farther south. Since the record system was broken, it was nearly impossible for people to determine where or if their loved ones were buried on the island, until a public database was created in 2013.
Someone finally found out their brother was buried on Hart Island back in '86, but that trench long been covered over. No markers, no way to tell who's who, just earth stacked over earth, until what's left is the ground itself.
But Hart Island has issues that go beyond record keeping. A CBS report from 2018 and the Hart Island Project found exposed decades-old skeletons along the coasts. The DOC also facilitated visitation to the grave sites, but hasn't made it easy to visit. The island is only accessible by ferry, and the DOC only allowed a few visitor appointments per month.
Dude, that's a no-no for me, bro. I can't picture needing a ferry ride just to visit someone I lost. That's not even peace. That's paperwork. Feels like they turned grief into a whole appointment. And even when you get there, you see bones poking out the coastline. Real humans, bro. That's not nature. That's the city letting the dead slip back into the world.
All of this is why today, Hart Island's dark reputation persists. Hart Island's existing issues compounded during the coronavirus pandemic, when the city sent a flood of unclaimed bodies. In 1988, at the height of the AIDS crisis, there were over 1,500 burials on Hart Island. In 2020, there were over 2,000.
It ain't even just a graveyard no more. It's a timeline of every disaster that hit New York. You dig deep enough out there, you ain't just hitting dirt, you hitting history.
A closer look at the data reveals a pattern of who was sent to Hart Island during the pandemic. These neighborhoods sent the most people to Hart Island in 2020. Some of them had the highest death rates in the city, and they're low-income neighborhoods with an overwhelming majority of Black and Latino residents and frontline workers who often don't have access to healthcare. These are the people most likely to be buried on Hart Island.
It's crazy, man. When you're broke, life already treats you like you're disposable. Then after you're gone, you still don't get a say in where you end up. Like the city files you away and moves on. That's what happens when every decision comes down to dollars. Poverty doesn't stop at death. It just decides where the body goes next.
A few months before New York City became the US coronavirus epicenter, Mayor de Blasio began to move Hart Island's jurisdiction from the Department of Correction to the Department of Parks and Recreation, and tasked them with making the island easier to visit by increasing ferry service. The city is also working with landscaping companies and federal agencies to address erosion and keep cemetery grounds clean and organized.
Alright, let me get this straight. Hart Island used to be run by the correction department, the same folks handling Rikers and inmates. Now it's the parks crew, the ones managing Central Park and City Gardens. That's a wild handoff, dog. From prison guards to park rangers.
Politicians have proposed adding a COVID memorial on Hart Island in the hopes that the island can become a more welcoming place for grieving loved ones.
Crazy how we wait till the damage is done to build peace for it. They're trying to plant flowers where the pain already grew wild. Maybe that's all we ever do. Build memorials hoping the living forget how much the dead had to carry.